Hi, welcome everyone. On behalf of the Helsinki Comics Festival, my name is Onni Mustonen, and I'm here to talk about the Tasa-arvoinen tulevaisuus and equal future project. With me, I have the three artists who contributed to the anthology. First up, we have PJ Holden from
Hello.
Northern Ireland.
Hi.
Then Maria Björklund from Finland.
Hello.
And lastly, but not least, Darryl Cunningham from the UK.
Hello.
Well, let's start with what is an equal future?
Are you asking
Who
about
goes
the
first?
book or the concept?
Well, let's start with the book and see if we can find the answer in the book.
You've got the actual copies, Maria. You can tell us.
Well, we have three
We have
comics.
here, like, I have an English one and Onni has a Finnish one. Then there is also a Swedish language one. I guess that's all.
I think so. That's at least all I've seen.
This was an idea by the what was the whole name? Finnish Institute in UK and Ireland. That was their idea.
Yeah, I think it was as opposed to doing an annual report on the sorts of things they do every year. I think they decided they would do it in comic book form. As a sort of an exploration of the kinds of work that they help finance and fund, and I think they maybe felt that it was a more digestible format than just a big solid chunk of writing that probably most people won't read. Comics, at the very least, the nice thing about comics, you can't help but read them. If someone opens up a page, so you've read half of it without realizing. So it's a really fast way to sort of inject information into your head. Whereas a wall-to-wall text of just reports was going to be quite dry. So I'm not quite sure where the idea of it all originated, but Nini was the lady who sort of contacted me on it, and was asking about it. And I think we had a roundtable discussion talking about how we were going to adapt this. And I don't know about you guys. I was kind of slightly floundering, not quite sure. I haven't really done work like that before. Generally, someone will write a script for me and then I'll draw a comic, and that's kind of it. I think you're probably more used to this kind of thing, Darryl.
Sort of. We were all given a kind of brief to pick a subject that we think will be a practical subject that would change the world for the better in some way. So each of us took a particular angle on it. I tried to look at universal basic income, which is the idea that a government would give each of its citizens a flat amount of money, regardless of what they did, whether they worked or not, from which people could sort of either build businesses or pursue them. So it was basically a way of stopping people falling into extreme poverty, and at the same time giving people enough money to live on and to actually spend money in the community. So I've been looking at, so I did a strip basically looking at the pros and cons of that, looking at what the research has been, and seeing what governments have done, what the approach is, and the whole damn thing, basically.
Your approach, Maria?
Yeah, well, it was like a combination of several projects. Like if Darryl was like in the other end of the spectrum with this, his whole comic was about this, excuse me, like a big concept level thing, and mine was some practical examples of social innovation. And I specifically wanted to choose ones that are all about like human interaction and very grassroots type of thing. So it's like the other side of the coin, so to speak. So I guess this, I think our comics complement each other very well. And also PJ was more interested in tech than me, so that also like worked nicely. I think everybody got to do an angle that they felt like natural for themselves.
Yeah, they had a whole bunch of case studies of different projects that they'd done, and we're kind of looking a way to distill some of those. Not I don't think it was ever we've got to take all of this information and put it into this thing, which would have been insane and impossible. But to kind of take some of those case studies, and I mean, I'm not very bright, so I took the most literal sense that I could do, which was to kind of tell the case studies as stories, but from the angle of just to interject a little bit of humor into it, and the angle of two robots in the far future, which presupposed all of humanity had been wiped out. So I don't know I don't know how successful any of the projects might have been in this alternative future, but the idea is these two little robots are talking about problems that they have at that point in time. And so one says to the other, well, here's some case files in the records that we have. It's a little bit cliched, a little bit sort of cheesy, but also the only way I could think of dealing with how to convey the information that I had to do. I envy Darryl for being able to kind of think, here's a big overview and a big picture, and here's how I'm going to tell this story. And universal basic income is a thing that's always fascinated me as well. So I look forward to getting the book to read it. But yeah, it was just a kind of from my point of view, it was how do I make this something that you'll want to read, as opposed to, look at and go, yes, well, very nice, but I'm not interested in any of this stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, it was a tech angle because I have a tech background. So it was all the tech stories that were interesting to me. I wish I could remember what any of them were.
You mean the cases?
Yeah, case studies. I can't remember what they were.
Let's see the book.
Yeah, I think one was about.
You have here a good gym. This is something to do with exercise.
Yeah, it was helping people. I think one of them was helping people who wanted to exercise, but also there was parts of the community that needed things done. And the idea was to marry these two ideas together and using technology to kind of, if you want to do some regular exercise, but at the same time, Jim down the street wanted to get his house built, how can you connect these two dots together? And I think that was one of that was one of the case studies, and they used sort of tech to kind of help that information. I think there was one on language as well. So, but mine was a kind of scattershot kind of but I think because of the work that the Finnish Institute does, there's to get a broad sampling of everything they do. Scattershot might have worked. I don't know. I don't know.
It was a little easier for me because it sort of fit into like a broad kind of work I was already doing. So I could sort of fit into, I'd already done sort of books on economics, and yes, you knew I was going to hold up one of my books at some point. But here it
You're
is.
absolutely free to.
So
you better read the name out in case someone's just listening to the podcast, Darryl. Just read the name out just in case someone's listening to the podcast but not watching it.
Oh, yeah. Billionaires by Darryl Cunningham. Here it is.
Do you think it'd be appropriate to read out the ISBN number, or do you think that's enough?
No, let's not go that far. But,
we'll put a link in the somewhere.
So it sort of fit into my natural interests anyway. So I was very happy to look at that. And also, one of the things that came up in looking at the strip is I was sort of interested in how, as a society, we're all sort of tied to the idea that we must have a job, even if the job is not in any way productive in any way. So I think that's one of the things I was sort of banging on about, is how we could free ourselves from sort of slavery, wage slavery, really, and be more productive in other ways, because not everything should be based around money. There are other kinds of work that we can do in sort of like, obviously looking after elderly parents or children. Often these are the unpaid kind of areas, but are just as absolutely crucial in our society. So we don't value them anything like enough.
Yeah. I think
that's actually really topical, because at least here in Finland we have these voices like at the time, like now, that are advocating for exactly the opposite. Like these CEO types saying that I work 80 hours a week and everybody should do that, and not interested in what's the value, or what's the content of the work, but the idea that you just need to work day and night. That's,
I
that's
mean,
kind of the whole point.
The thing that, well, there's a thing called bullshit jobs. Ethereum, I'm sure you've heard of that.
Yes, I've heard of
where
that, yeah.
there's so many jobs. They're just things that are filling out time for people. They're not
Plenty of
real
middle
jobs.
management jobs could be,
Yeah.
like many meetings could be just an email, and many of these jobs could be.
I mean, one thing that was really interesting was over lockdown in the UK was the fact that the UK government were paying people not to work. And suddenly you had this really strange situation where if you were a CEO of a company, you'd be on whatever, £80,000 you might be getting from the government. And if you were, a farmhand, you were, or whatever the job was, generally considered a much lower level, you'd be getting £15,000 from the government, say, for example. So you've got, on the one hand, person A getting 80,000 from the government per year effectively, and person B getting £15,000 for the government. Neither of them doing anything, because they're both not doing anything. You're kind of going, so the value of him not doing anything is more than the value of them not doing anything, which is the weirdest kind of thing. And it seemed very strange. And suddenly the whole concept of money and jobs suddenly went out the window, and you're like going, that is very peculiar how we've valued some of these jobs to be worth more than others. So when they're suddenly not doing them, the government's quite prepared to pay for these people, but it just lots of things stopped making sense over lockdown, over the way these jobs were handled. And I think there was a big talk at the start of lockdown about how universal basic income and things like that might be important factors, and it might be something that will permanently break because of coronavirus, and this might be a permanent fix for it. But I have a horrible feeling we're not going to see something like that. There's too much money tied up in billionaire. I saw a great headline that said, I don't know how true this is, but it said something like the workers have lost essentially 2.8 trillion of their income, and the multiple billionaires have earned 2.9 or 2.89 trillion. That's like, it's weird how these two numbers are almost identical. So the money hasn't really been lost; it's just gone to them. So yeah, there's a big disconnect between what real value for money is. When people can earn, I know, multiple millions per day doing literally nothing because they happen to have a huge amount of money. And again, I saw there's a thing talking about how Jeff Bezos's ex-wife is something like 39 billion, whatever it is, and she spent 8 billion in that year on charitable giving, which was the biggest amount of charitable giving anyone had ever given. But by the end of the year, she was 60 billion up. She was, she had still earned, just by having that amount of money, still earned so much money that the amount of money she gave away was essentially nothing, because it was just earning from having. So there's something really desperately broken about capitalism, and especially when you get into those billionaire areas, there's something desperately wrong with it all. And universal basic income is one potential, I think, of how you might fix some of it, but I don't know how it all gets fixed. I don't know if anyone's going to listen to a bunch of cartoonists for how to fix major economies.
It's because we think our voices are little and unimportant. They hope we won't say anything, but that's the reason why we should speak out. We should produce books like this and get this information out there and get a dialogue going, because unless people are talking and thinking about these things, there's certainly not going to be any action in the future. So it's important that we do it, even if it seems completely futile. We've got to try anyway. The odds are stacked against us, but that makes it more important that we should speak.
Yeah, I think one thing that the lockdown did was it suggested that the way things are done is only the way things are done because that's the way things are done. It does not necessarily mean this is the way things should be done forever or the way things are always going to be done. It says that there's other just because we're always picking A doesn't mean to say A is the only pick. There are other options, but we have to really think about those, because there's so much vested interest in keeping us in a certain line and keeping us going in that direction. But I don't know. I've certainly enjoyed getting a universal basic income for the government as a freelancer. I've had some of that because of the way things have worked out. It's been sort of, freelancers in the UK got up to a certain amount, if you were affected by the coronavirus, you'd get a certain amount, which actually weirdly meant my income was more stable than it's ever been. You know, as a freelancer, it was the most stable my income's ever been. And you're thinking, I'd like more of that, please. That's a good way of living. So anyway, that's me. I'll shush now.
I guess one strange thing about last year has been like a really good example of how the whole system is really doesn't work, and suddenly you have this book that pretty much shows like all the strange little things how we can undermine the system or change it. So I guess what's it been like to look at we'll talk a little bit about how do you think about what this book can do, or how your perspective on the matter has changed. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you think, well, what's it been like to have this book, working on this book, and then have this whole strange year going hand by hand?
Initially, and I'm sorry, I'm going to just talk away. I'm sorry.
Take it away.
Initially, just if you want to just say something, I will shut up for a good 5 minutes, and then I'll let everyone else speak. Initially, we were all supposed to meet up. We were supposed to go to London, England, somewhere to. It would have been nice. Coronavirus hit, and suddenly everything was
wasn't
online.
happening.
Yeah. I do remember there was still some optimism. I was supposed to go to a convention as well in Montenegro. That would have been amazing. And there was an awful lot of, it'll be fine in a couple of weeks. This is going away. Don't you worry. And it's like, I think this might be our new state of being. I think there's a terrible tendency to kind of, when something massive, a black swan event happens. I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the black swan. Yeah. The idea that some things are so outrageous that there's no way they're ever going to happen until they do happen, and then everything is fundamentally different. And so this is the idea that the coronavirus, when it first hit, was everything will just go back to normal almost immediately. We just have to wait a week or two, and then everything. And even a year in, 6 months into it, people were still thinking that way. And I don't necessarily think it will be, but it was an odd thing to do while this was all happening, especially at the height of it all happening, and especially as well because we were sort of sitting in a house, locked down, having to write things about being outdoors and talking. It was an odd thing. Suddenly you're writing characters and stories that are social with people chatting to each other, and it's like a situation you weren't seeing because you couldn't go out. So that I find that all a bit odd.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting back to speaking, going to events and speaking in front of live audiences. That was a thing that I used to really enjoy doing. Any excuse really to talk about myself and my work, basically. And I've struggled a bit with the whole sort of technical aspects of having to do a lot of work and talking on Zoom and things like that. And it's been very difficult because I always in the past enjoyed sort of interaction with live audiences, and it's much more difficult doing it via a computer screen. So that's something I've missed. As for other aspects of how it's changed my life, I think perversely, I've made more money in the past year than I've made for many years because a lot of other things became available to me. And I also got a big amount of money from an arts kind of grant as well. And I tried many years to get one of those and never happened. And just fortuitously, it all came to pass at a time when I was supposed to stay in and work a lot on my own, on my own for a long time. So I was also finishing off a book. And so that helped concentrate my mind on that too.
When the pandemic.
How's things changed with you, Maria, then? How are things changed with you, Mary? How have you managed on that?
Actually, the timeline with this book was that it was we were approached just a little bit before the corona hit, and when we were writing this, it was the first spring that the first lockdown and stuff like that, and actually with our little animation company. When the first wave hit, we kind of, it's like suddenly everything stopped, like there were no new clients asking for anything. So actually the timing of this book was excellent, because I had this on my plate, and I had an other, like a little bit bigger project. So if I wouldn't, without these two, it would have been like a really difficult time the first spring though. So this was great to have. And after that, it kind of started picking up again, I guess, and I got some grants and stuff. But yeah, I think I have been very lucky in a way that, well, we were talking earlier that we usually just anyway sit at home or in a workspace and don't see anybody. We are just like drawing and doing stuff like that. So it hasn't really changed so much. I have already had a workroom at home. I have another here with my animation company. I've even been in some residencies during this time in Finland. Oh, that's changed. I usually like apply for some art residencies like every year, and suddenly it was not a good idea to apply abroad. So I started applying to Finland instead. So that was a little change, but I think the first few months that were, I think, pretty lean, like financially, I think I survived easy enough because there was nothing to spend your money on. Nothing was happening. I never ate out, or I never went shopping, or I just like there wasn't even the fee from the gym or anything, because everything was closed. So it was quite cheap actually to live at that point.
This is the thing with comic creators, is when they are first little baby comic creators and they all get together, they're talking about what kind of pens they can buy. And as they get older and more grizzled, they talk about, how was your year financially? How did things go?
When we have all the pens.
Yeah, we've got all the pens we'll ever need. We've discovered there's no such thing as a magic pen. Now it's just, is there grants? Have you got any work on? How's it going there? Have you got a studio? Is it out of the office? Yeah, it is funny. I mean, and like for me, mostly it's my family have been at home rather than out. So instead of being in isolation, I've been surrounded by people, which is driving me up a wall. But luckily I've got a little studio room, so I can lock myself in here and get some work done. So and there's been plenty of work. It's been a good sort of a decent work here. But yeah, I mean, I do miss going to conventions. I'm not mad keen on Zoom calls because I lack social graces anyway. And when you turn in Zoom where I can't read body language because I'm so busy fixated looking at myself and going, do I look weird? Am I, so I've no idea when someone's just grimacing at me going, why will he not shut up? Which is a thing that happens on Zoom. So yeah, so it's been all right. Been okay.
So I've been invited to this festival in the Lake District in October.
Yeah, we all going to be at the Lake District.
What?
We all going to be at the Lake District.
Yeah. So if it's possible, then we will get our at least one festival with this book, I guess.
No one's invited me.
No.
But that's okay. I mean, I'm still wary of traveling. I think the biggest problem right now is any travel plans you make are they at best they've got to be lightly penciled in, because who knows?
Exactly.
I know in the UK the government's saying they've already cancelled sort of opening up for 4 weeks, and the Prime Minister's basically saying, well, look, everything we've done now is not going to go backwards. But you know what? You can't count on that. The virus isn't on our side particularly. It's not going to go, yeah, sure, that plan sounds fine to me. That's okay. We'll do that then. It's a virus. It's going to do whatever it's going to do. So we'll see. It's all tentative planning right now, I think, for everything.
Yeah, we will believe it when we are there.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Even if you do get somewhere, who knows? I mean, I've seen people go to places and then suddenly find that they've got to leave shortly. You know, the situation changes in either their country or their home country, or you know, some other situation arises, and suddenly they've gone there for 3 days, and now they've got to stay for 14 weeks in quarantine, or for 14 days in quarantine. That's like, I don't know if I want to risk that. I think I'll just stay at home. Thanks very much for a while yet, anyway. So. Yeah, but that's the like. I'd love to do I'd love to sit on a panel with an audience and have a chat about stuff like this. It is lovely to do. That kind of thing is fun to do. Or sit in a pub and talk to other creatives about the work they're doing. That's the stuff. That's the stuff you really miss. It would have been lovely to sit down, because this was a hard project from my perspective, because as I say, the kind of work I do is someone writes it and I draw it, and then I move on to the next thing. There's not an awful lot of, you know, I'm kind of thinking about it beyond where's my script, and thank you very much for my script, I'm going to draw that. Whereas this one really did require a lot of sort of sitting down with Nini, who was writing my elements, and she was going, what do you want to do here? And I'm going, well, let's see the case study. She gave me a case study. I go, well, here's sort of what I want to do here. Do you think we can, and hammering that out? And that was all sort of over Zoom, which was, I mean, probably would have been over Zoom or something like that anyway, because I'm based in Belfast. But the very first sit down meeting, I think quite a lot of stuff, that assumptions are made that you don't quite know are being made until you go to do a thing, and then you realize, oh no, I've picked them up wrong, or they've picked me up wrong, and we've talked at cross purposes and so on. But I think, I mean, generally as well, when I'm any project I'm doing, if somebody says let's have a meeting about it first, I kind of suddenly go, that's like a red flag to me. Go, no, say no to meetings, because they never lead to anything. You know, find that, Maria, you've probably done more meetings than me, but I find meetings just often go nowhere. I don't know, maybe that's just me.
Well, it's true, they go nowhere, but I guess because I do a lot of like short span stuff with animation and illustration and everything, in many cases you need to go to the meeting if it's gonna go anywhere. So and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes it does.
Yeah,
I think you just have to accept that a certain percentage is not going to happen.
Yeah,
exactly. But unless you show up in the first place, you're never going to get that chance. So you might as well.
Yeah.
But don't invest too
they
much.
have coffee and
that's the biggest thing. Don't invest too much in that meeting, because you might come out of it thinking, well, this is it. I'm gonna be a Rodney. I'm gonna be a millionaire. To quote a famous British TV show. This time next year we'll all be rich. But it rarely works out that way. But it's usually, I mean, that one did lead to something. I think when she was first contacted, I was thinking, just send me a script. Just send me a script. I don't need a meeting. Just send me a script. Please just send me a script. But in the meeting, we kind of thrashed out the format, which I think is nice. I haven't seen it. So, but it's a square bound, square shaped book, which I think is a nice format. You can tell me, does it work? It's like an album, a musical
really
album.
Nice.
So soft bind.
Yeah, it's really, yeah.
As opposed to kind of more normal landscapey format for a comic book. It just felt like a nicer size and shape to do something like that. I think you've probably worked in that format more than me, Darryl. Have you? Have you done stuff?
No, I've never worked entirely square. To have the chance to do something that was just 4 panels.
Yeah. I've done some square.
Very interesting and sort of limiting in a way, but I kind of, made it work for me, really.
I think it was originally my idea, because
I think it was.
You've done
because of those, yeah.
And these also inside there are strips that are 4 squares each.
Yeah.
So for these books it makes perfect sense, but it was pretty nice for this one too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think my experience was a bit of a reverse of PJ's, because I've used to scripting my stuff a lot, and last years I've been doing a lot of scripting for animation. So it was actually really nice that in this project there were people from the Institute who were volunteering to script. So it didn't all fall on me. I could just I read the stuff they were writing, and we discussed it, and I was giving some input and giving my own ideas, but it was not solely on me to produce the script. So it was more of a dialogue, and I think Ninni pulled the most weight on that. So that gave me time to work on some other projects while the script was prepared, and I felt that was really nice. Also because they have done all these interviews and have all this background info, so they know a lot about it. And I can just ask them like the questions like, okay, but what do you think the point is here? And maybe we could have the different points illustrated by different cases and like just juggle the ideas.
I think that would be the main difference between if they decided to put out a report and asking us to do that, is we're kind of coming at it blind and going, well, what's the really interesting bit about this? Okay, you've done all this work, but what does it really mean? What is that? What does it mean to somebody who doesn't know anything about that? What's that important aspect of it? And I think getting that information out and then kind of distilling it into illustration is probably what the benefit of it is, what the benefit of a book like that is. And it's very approachable. And I think it's free. Isn't it free?
It's free, yes.
It's free. So, I mean, it's a free comic.
Yeah, you can get it free.
You can also download it if you like.
Yeah, the printed version is free, but you can also download it, and we'll have the links down in the...
There you go. Links in the links.
Links in the links, yeah. But yeah, like I said, it's nice that you can get these ideas through in this like novel format. So I guess the big question would be, what do you hope that the reader would like get? Is there some idea, like big, however big or small, that you hope that gets stuck there in your respective comics?
Go ahead there, Darryl. I think you have a clear idea.
I didn't quite get the question there. Sorry.
Is there like what do you hope the reader can like gets from the comic? Like, is there an idea you hope that really gets stuck
I think
in
most
there?
of all, optimism, to be optimistic. And because there is a tendency, and we all do this, to look at the problems that we all have in the world today and think, oh, it's insolvable, it can't ever be changed, nothing can change. But I'm old enough to sort of have lived through, a big period of time when I was growing up. There were things like apartheid in South Africa, and there was the troubles in Northern Ireland, and it seemed that these things were unsolvable, and then they could never be resolved. And then one day they were resolved. And unless you can think optimistically, things can never change, really. And what we know about history is that things can suddenly change. Things that seem like set in stone forever can suddenly be just swept away. And when you look back, you think, oh, you realize it was inevitable that would happen. So the world situation now, where we have like a sort of small set of multi-billionaires basically owning everything, that's not necessarily going to be like that forever. Things can change. We have to think that they can change, because otherwise they will not change.
Yeah, I agree with him. I stand by that, what Darryl said.
Underline that.
Underline all of that. Yeah, all of that.
It would be great if that could be the message of the whole book, not like that people would get that out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I admit I didn't have any lofty ambitions beyond, I hope I draw a nice comic. I hope it looks okay. I hope Nini's happy with it.
It's beautiful.
That's largely what I was thinking. It was not. It was. I hope the Finnish Institute are happy that what I've done is the kind of thing they want.
I've got the feeling that they have been pretty happy, like all over.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
very nice client, I have to say.
Yeah, they were lovely. It's one of the things as a comic creator, you're sort of. I try not to think of the audience, because I kind of don't know who the audience is going to be. I try to think about making me happy. That's my primary objective. Did I amuse myself while I was drawing this thing? And also making whoever the writer is or the editor, making those people happy that I've told the story that they want in the way they want it told. My big thing is, is this what, because I always think of any story as the writer is telling me a thing and I'm telling it to the reader. And so my job is to make sure I've conveyed what the writer has told me properly. And so I'm always thinking in terms of that. And the readers, you know, I don't think about them at all because they're an amorphous blob. It's very hard to impose anything on them, I think. You know, it's so hard to know who's going to read it and who's going to pick these things up, and so which is why I stand behind everything Darryl said, because that sounded great.
Yeah. So now this book will be, like we said, is available online, and you can get the physical book at the Helsinki Comics Festival later, and there will be an exhibition as well. And I think my editor will take this out if I'm incorrect, but in Lakes International Comics Festival, there'll be a larger exhibition later, as Maria said. But what else are you working on? Is there, like, now's your chance to plug away if there's something you'd like our audience to know. Where can they find you?
I'm actually not really working a lot on comics at the moment, because I'm scripting a children's animated series that is based on these comics by me. But also I'm doing quite a lot of street art at the moment, because it's summer, it's the season. So I'm like outside painting stuff. And what else? That's the majority of it. But if anybody really wants to know what I'm doing, I will suggest that you follow me on Instagram, because that's where I put like all new art stuff.
Okay, well, I'm going to hold up the book again. So this is out from Myriad in the Billionaires is out from Myriad in the UK, and it's out from Drona Quarterly in North America. And I'm currently working on, because I like the big subjects, you know, I'm working on a book on Putin and Russia. It's subtitled The Rise of a Dictator. So that's a book that should be out in the UK in this autumn, hopefully. I'm going to print this week, if it all goes well. And from Drawn and Quarterly, the book will be out from Drawn Quarterly sometime in the winter as well, I think. So that's what I'm doing.
I'm again, all very lofty things that I'm not anywhere get near.
I don't mean to denigrate you in any way.
No, I know. Listen, believe me, I grew up wanting to read comics about monkeys in space, and I am drawing comics about monkeys in space. So
you go back to doing monkeys in space comics, actually.
I'm doing currently in 2000 AD, so I don't know when this will go out, but I've just finished the last episode of it. Is a strip called The Talented Mr. Chimsky, which is about a super intelligent ape who is currently in space in 2000 AD. So that's running in 2000 AD at the moment. I'm also doing a massive war book, which I'm about, I think I'm about 60 pages into 170 or 180 pages of World War II stuff, which I can't really talk about because these things always take so long. By the time you finish them, you don't want to spoil the fact that they're coming yet until they're closer. So I'm doing both of those things at the moment. So well, I've just finished the ape thing. The ape thing is done, but that's in 2000 AD, which is available worldwide, I think. So you should be able to pick that up anywhere.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you all for joining me, and thank you all for the book and the project in general. And yes, I guess all that's left is for all our viewers to come to the Helsinki Comics Festival, September 4th to September 5th.
I'd like to go to that.
Yeah, me too.
We'll find once things settle down, once we get back to normal, I'm sure we'd love to get you all here and talk about this book, talk about monkeys in space, talking about Putin. Really looking forward to, opening up. And well, thank you again for the interview, and thank you so much for the book. It's a great read, and like I said, you can download it free. The link is down there.
Bye.